again.
Oh.
And I did this and I was like using that finger thing.
Kit that you borrowed?
I'm gonna do it all myself. My husband perms it and cuts it. And normally, yeah. I think I'll go to Nora this time.
I used to see her name. There's
These
two
three
of them.
budgets that we got dated
There was a couple
Yeah,
years
this
ago.
still is.
August 9th. Got these, I think, 2 meetings ago. Do these go into here now?
So that's the a view into the actuals.
Yep.
So I don't,
So then when we get the inserts for this, it'll contain the actuals as well, but more up to date, in which case this is no longer valid.
What is it? What is it you got, Dave?
I have the general fund dated August 9th.
Yeah, you get one of those every month.
Got
I
it.
just had the one in the box in there.
Yep, you'll get a new one each month.
We don't have to worry about.
It is currently on and active. What I'd like to try and do today is if we can, I mean, it's what we're supposed to be doing anyways, is try not to talk over each other, of course. And try and enunciate and not speak really slowly, but try and pace our speech. And as Joshua was saying, especially for this first run, when we do roll call, it would be awesome if we just kind of went around. Maybe we can set the ground rule that we go around clockwise or counterclockwise, say your name too. Because what I'm going to do is, instead of learning everyone's name in how I initially thought, which is we kind of say a phrase and do it live, we're going to go back and tell it later what each, it'll just tag like person 1, person 2, person 3, unless you're already in the system. And then we'll go tell it who that person was, and then it'll ID you and capture your voice print.
Do we have a quorum?
I think we do now. Yeah, and it's just now 6. So we'll call the meeting to order. Clock. Roll call.
Jacob Bemis.
Dave Hershey.
Ruben Parker.
Rebecca Johnson.
Liz Dion, Town Administrator.
Laura Parker, Finance Manager.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion made, Dave Hershey.
Seconded, Jacob Bemis.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We'll get there.
So for the first item under old business is the recording of meeting minutes. And Jake, you want to just give a summary?
Sure. We're using the new software made by Otter. And it has already been used a couple times, and we're in the process of learning our names into the system. And did we determine last time if we wanted, I think I took point on handling this. Do we need to officially charge me with taking the transcripts and making minutes? Or
Yeah, I mean,
Justin?
if there's an opportunity to share it, then I think we could do that. I don't know how do the-
Yes, well, that's one thing. After the meeting's done, Josh can take the transcript that's generated and can just send the file.
Got it. So Josh can
text.
send it.
So he can send it to you, or he could send it to Stacy, and then it can be sent out to everyone. There will be, especially in the beginning, there will be errors. So if folks want me to sort of parse through it and put together a summary out of it and then send that out, I'm happy to do that.
That would be great. Yeah,
Okay.
and then if you can send that to Stacy.
Sure,
Done.
absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. Great. Any other discussion on that? Okay. From a new business perspective, I asked Liz and Laura if they could come and speak with us tonight. We've had conversations, especially in the last meeting, but I think in some prior about, I guess, thinking about and exploring opportunities for the different department heads to work together on purchases. And I think, questions around like, how do we order things and do we have a formal PO process and things of that nature. And I thought rather than us, hypothesize, maybe we could hear from you, what kind of things exist today and, where there's opportunities have been explored or things like that. I think it's just a good grounding for us as a budget committee as we meet with the department heads.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just reiterate a little bit of what you and I communicated about. One is the purchase order system. We do have a purchase order system in place. It's been in place for many years. And everyone, town government is required to use it for most things. I think there's a minimum dollar amount requirement on that. They are used for most invoices, and if it's a large project or a large purchase with many facets to it, the same purchase order is used. We track those though, not by purchase order numbers. We don't have the software for it. In fact, a lot of municipalities don't. But we do track invoices with the POs by the vendor and the budget line department. And there was a question about hiring a full-time electrician and plumber for the town. We have not done that, nor will we be doing that, at least at this time. Maybe when we get bigger, when the town gets bigger. We don't have enough work for a full-time electrician or a full-time plumber. We do have certain electricians and certain plumbers that we do use though, and they are considered the town electrician or the town plumber. They're available for emergencies. They treat us right. They're very good. And, we have a couple of each. So if one is out of town or something, or just simply unavailable, then we go to the next one. So we do have coverage there. And the same electricians and plumbers are used on all the town properties. Laura, anything you want to add on this? Were there any other questions or thoughts or whatever it was you were looking for answers?
The electrician and plumber were kind of hypothetical, just to kind of, I guess, give the example, but I'm certainly open to that.
Jake Bemis here. For the remainder of this meeting, can we just throw in saying our name before we speak? I know it's kind of
Sure.
weird if you don't
Yes.
appreciate it, or
Yeah.
don't appreciate it, excuse me. I've had too much coffee.
Yeah, Dave Hershey here. I was going to ask Liz if I could get a copy of a purchase order, or just a blank one.
Certainly. Elizabeth Dion, certainly.
Okay. And then the other is a copy of the policy regarding POs, like when do you use them?
Sure. Elizabeth Dion, certainly. I believe That would be our employee.
Well, I have the
We've
memo
separated it.
currently right here that we just sent out. Would you like that? It's the memo on,
So there
When
is,
when to use it? Yeah, great.
yeah, perfect.
we'll send you, Elizabeth Dion, we'll send you whatever we have.
Great.
In fact, Elizabeth Dion will send it to all of the board members. So that you-
Ruben Parker, are there other examples of, I guess, where we do collaborate across departments, you know, kind of looking at the broader needs of the whole town and, you know, acquire something once, or, you know, I guess similar to the electrician example, you know, kind of pool the need, right, and represent it.
Elizabeth Dion, yes, we do that whenever we can on anything, whether it's purchasing supplies or other types of vendors. I can't think of any off the top of my head. We also have contracts with certain vendors. So for instance, any paving that is done in the town, we have a contract, a 3-year contract with a particular company that does all of the paving for the town. So, did you have any questions on this, or?
The on the hypothetical example of Dave Hershey here on the plumber and electrician. And again, not suggesting to promote one or the other, okay? Have we looked at, and maybe it's feasible, maybe it's not, maybe another town just and splitting that work, okay? The other thing I was thinking of is might even be easier. I don't know if the Prospect Mountain High School has an electrician and a plumber, okay? But thinking that Barnstead, Alton, and the high school, now that might be, you know, an appropriate amount, and then just put it into the high school budget. But yet both towns would use it and then would split that based upon the same rate in which we contribute to the high school on student population.
Elizabeth Dion, I think the short answer is no. However, we do use some of the same vendors. I'm not sure, you know, if there's enough work between multiple towns to hire a full, you know, these companies have their own, you know, their own company.
Oh, yeah, no, Dave Hershey here again. No problem on that. All I was thinking is if it's feasible, and again, have no idea whether it is or isn't, okay? But the thought would be that if you were able to hire somebody in-house and share them, you gain the economies of scale, but you also avoid, you know, the profit and overhead that a independent contractor would charge, you know? So again, just a thought, you know, and not looking to overly complicate the process either, other than just, you know, ask the question. So where would we go to ask that?
Well, the Elizabeth Dion, the selectmen's rep, would normally take these questions back to the Board of Selectmen for a response, I guess, and then would bring it back to the Budget Committee.
Okay, let's make the request, you know. As an example, Jake and I were at the fire department today, asked that question, and they use an electrician 2 times a year. Okay, so if that's kind of the consensus with everybody else, then yeah, probably doesn't make sense. Okay, but on the other hand, if you go to another department in another town, say, oh yeah, we use them often. Okay, then maybe that's worth pursuing.
Elizabeth Dion, I will certainly bring this to the board's attention on behalf of the selectmen's rep for input on that consideration. You know, there's another facet to this, and that would be the vendor himself or herself, whether they would want to do that at a discounted rate or
Right.
something like that. So
Right. Never crossed my mind, Liz.
we the vendors that we do use treat us very well. They're
Right.
local. We try to use local. They're top notch.
Yep. And again, not suggesting that's not the case, but perhaps that'd be the first one we would go to say, this is what we're thinking, we consider you a strategic partner, would you like to partner with us on this? So, and again, not a suggestion at this point, only an inquiry.
Jacob Bemis here. I was just wondering if you could sort of get me up to speed on what kinds of software or solutions are currently used to communicate, track. You said you didn't have a software to track POs.
Elizabeth Dion. Wait, how long are we gonna have to do this? Just for this meeting?
Yeah.
Just for this
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, just so the machine recognizes voices going
Okay.
forward.
Good. So we don't have that capability. We
Okay.
have many other types of software programs that we do use. Some of them, all of the departments use, and some of them are specialty software programs just for certain departments.
Okay.
So as an example, in a broader sense, all of the town departments use the Microsoft Office suite of all the different, Excel and Word and Outlook and all of that. Our email communications are via Outlook. There are certain software packages and programs for the finance department. In fact, the sheets that you have in your binders that look pre-printed, not like a Word document, in other words, that is a particular financial software program that we use for your monthly revenue reports, expenditure reports, these budget sheets, and things of that nature. There are others. There are a lot of different software programs. For instance, the building department has a couple of different ones for permits and revenues and things of that nature. Fire department has fire-focused software programs, even for notifying members of a call program for that. Laura, you want to jump in here at all with some of the other ones that you're
Doing great, Liz Dion.
So, and then the library, which is governed separately from the town, the library is under the authority of the trustees, not the Board of Selectmen. They also have their own sort of software programs for books and things of that nature.
I was thinking, if you're, okay, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Dave Hershey here. I was just wondering, Jake, where you've already had, excuse me, contact with Josh.
Mhm.
Okay. Would it make sense, maybe if Josh could provide a list of software licenses that the town uses? And then based upon that list, maybe there's an opportunity there to combine software and therefore not renew certain licenses. Okay. Just a thought. Okay. Maybe there isn't, maybe there is, but just ask the question.
Elizabeth Dion. So I have a question. Why is this particular subject matter being asked?
I don't know if I have a reason.
Okay.
Okay. To be honest with you,
Because I
yeah.
was assuming that maybe you were, the budget committee was trying to think of ways to save money. But really in that situation, that's more of a selectmen's, Board of Selectmen issue to be doing that. The laws are pretty specific what the selectmen are authorized to cover and work on. And the laws for the budget committee as well.
So
Kinda curious.
we are not allowed to ask what software is being used and then determine from that a potential another question, which of these may be combinable. We're not allowed to ask that.
No, Elizabeth Dion, no, I'm not saying that exactly. You can ask questions all you want, but if you're thinking, I guess what I was getting at is if you were thinking that you had the authority to actually put those changes in place into
Oh,
the
no, not at
budgets
all.
that you're looking at, then, you know, you
No.
may want to rethink that a little bit, or, you know, we could have a discussion or something.
No, I'm not suggesting we do have the authority to that.
Okay.
However, if by asking those questions, the answer is none of these are combinable.
Yeah.
Well, the question's been answered and resolved. On the other hand, if there's a handful that are, then maybe that's worth further consideration.
So I can answer that somewhat, that specific question. Certain packages, like with Microsoft,
Yep.
for instance, the entire suite, that's combined among, you know, around for all of the town departments. But there are many other software programs that each department uses that are not combinable. There are some exceptions to that. However, there's a particular vendor called Avatar. There's another one called Vision. And those software programs are used by the tax office and by the assessing department. So some of those, when possible, are combined. You can get, the town can get a little bit of a discount if you know, purchase both, for instance. So we do that whenever we can.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm also thinking of it in terms of security. The older and the less maintained a particular software program is, you know, creates an additional opportunity for a hack.
Hmm.
You know, so for example, if you're using Microsoft products, they're probably more up to date, okay, than a 10-year-old software program that the last update was 7 years ago. Okay, that's all. And again, don't know that for sure, other than just asking the question, you know? So then maybe Jake, if you want to reach out to Josh and just get a list
Okay.
of the software licenses, you know? And then maybe Josh even has some input on that, you know, like, hey, I've looked at this and I've looked at that. I think these are combinable. I haven't had a chance to do it. You know, you never know, right? But it's worth the inquiry.
Jake Bemis here. Sure. I'm already working with him closely on other aspects.
So.
Any other questions for Liz or Laura? Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Great.
It's our pleasure.
Oh, come on, now tell the truth.
No, it's our pleasure. You know that.
I know.
So the next agenda item is reviewing key deliverable dates. And so I don't know if anybody has it in front of them now. It was passed out at a previous meeting and as well as emailed from Stacy. But it's the key dates for the overall process with the dates specific to the budget committee highlighted. And I think before I get to that, I guess as the binders show, we're starting to get the different department budgets. And Stacy's going to help us get those meetings with the department heads scheduled to review those. I guess a question that I had, I think at our first meeting, we confirmed that Thursdays were good, you know, for this group to meet. So I just wanted to confirm that still worked for everybody, so that I can ask her to start scheduling those meetings.
Recognizing that in winter season, Thursday night's a conflict for me,
When is that specifically, like December?
as soon as racing starts, okay, which will depend on snow conditions.
Okay.
So probably the first week of January
Okay.
is what I would guess.
And I think based on last year and based on the schedule, hopefully we're done pretty close to that. So if we need to adjust maybe one or two there, then. we can make that. Okay, great. So I saw a lot of nods, so I think Thursdays are still good. So I'll ask Stacy to start getting those scheduled. But then some of the key dates, and Liz and Laura, please keep me straight here if I go offline, but so January 11th is the last day to give notice of a January 18th public hearing on the annual budget. And I think these are the outside dates, right? Like they can be earlier, they just can't be later. Is that accurate?
Elizabeth Dion, yes, that's correct.
So then on the 18th is the last day to hold a public hearing on the annual budget. And again, I think our target would be to try to do that sooner in case there's a snowstorm or whatever, right? January 27th is the last day for the official budget committee and final budget recommendations to the governing body. And then it's not set yet, but somewhere in between February 5th and February 12th would be the deliberative session where the budget's presented to town. So that's what we're working towards. That's what all this is leading up to. Any questions or comments on that? So like I said, I will ask Stacy to start scheduling those meetings with the department heads using Thursdays from here on out.
And Ruben, when you say scheduling meetings with the department, meaning they're coming here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, as opposed to the ones we've been doing independently.
Correct.
Got it.
Right, them coming to present their budget.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Okay, any other new business? So next up is approval of minutes.
Yep, motion to approve.
Jake Bemis seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jake Bemis, aye.
Dave Hershey, aye. It's an eye for an eye.
Open it up to public input. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Richard Shea. I've lived in Alton now for about 3 years. I hadn't really planned on doing any public input, but there isn't any other public, so I have taken an interest in the budgeting process, primarily because I'm a taxpayer and a user of town services, so that has a great bearing. One thing that I was aware of from last year's budget process, at least for the Board of Selectmen, it seemed as though they did a lot of approvals of individual department budgets without understanding clearly, or maybe the information wasn't available, I don't know, but what the entire budget would be. And when the entire budget had its bottom line, and they were somewhat surprised and disappointed at the likely tax increase necessary to support it, then they started to backtrack and try to make percentage reductions across the board. And that, of course, is easy to do at the presidential level, but if you're in the trenches, it's not so easy to do. And I just wondered whether this year, this committee, and subsequently the Board of Selectmen, or concurrently maybe the Board of Selectmen, will have at least a close estimate of the likely final budget as they review the individual department budgets. Because if you realize that the final budget is likely to have a substantial tax increase, you probably will be a bit more aggressive in looking at departments than you might be otherwise. And also the other area that I wonder about, as I understand, as a result of the federal actions, that we stand to realize something on the order of $270,000 or $280,000 in federal funds. And I'm sure they are going to come with a lot of rules and regulations about where they can be used and where they can't. And perhaps no portion of the local current town budget can make any use of it. But if there are opportunities, I think, again, like a final bottom line budget, it would be helpful for the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen to be aware of where those funds could be used, because obviously any use of them would offer the opportunity to reduce what the budget might otherwise be. And beyond that, I just thank you very much for being here and putting in the effort, because I know from past experience, it's a thankless task that takes a lot of time. Thank you.
Anybody want to respond?
Like to-
Yeah. Thanks. I remember you from last year. So you brought up a couple of really, I think, good points. And in no particular order, I'd like to, respond to those. One is you brought up the getting to the finish line, if you will, and then having a comment made by whomever indicating that the budget was too high and it needed to be reduced. And then it was sort of kind of a, maybe a little bit of a backwards process for a period of time. Okay. On the budget committee, there has been motions made, okay, at the beginning of the budgetary season, asking department heads to provide optional budgets, the one that they would normally have provided, and then an option, okay, identifying the components of those options at a 5% reduction and a 10% reduction. That was made 2 years ago. It did not have enough votes, okay, to go beyond just a motion. It was made again last year, okay, didn't have enough, which I thought was interesting because once it got to the selectman level, somebody at that level thought it was more effective to suggest the budget was just too high for no particular reason and provide an arbitrary reduction of 5% rather than a more calculated approach representing the 5%, whereby individuals might provide feedback as to what parts of that 5%, using that as an example, would be services that people could go without. That was voted down. Okay. It was presented again this year. Okay. And there were not sufficient votes to carry that motion forward in the budget committee. So in terms of providing options, okay, I can't tell you if that will repeat itself, okay, at the end of this cycle as well, because the recommendation to reduce the budget came from outside the budget committee. Okay, so the other was, I think that you had mentioned to show the budgetary or the budget impact on the individual tax rate. Okay, as to what those things would, what the impact would be, 2 cents, 3 cents, $1, whatever it is. Okay, on the assessed values. Okay, if I remember correctly, in the budgetary seminar that we had, a workshop last week, there is a requirement in an RSA that says that for any of the proposals for a change in the budget, it's a requirement. Okay, and I'm hoping one of you guys helps me out on this because I'm going out a little on a limb. Okay, requires a publication of the tax rate as best estimated that article or budget will impact the tax rate. Is that, am I close?
Elizabeth Dion, are you speaking to warrant articles?
Is that what the tax rate was on warrant articles?
So there, I think that's what you're, I know we were all attending
Right.
that full day seminar.
Right.
So there is an option that municipalities may use, but I think it has to be voted in. And that is to put a little sentence at the end of each warrant article that indicates if it were to be passed, what the effect on the tax rate would be. And if that hasn't been approved, it can always go on to the, it's like a copy of the warrant, but with an explanation below each warrant article. And that is available and handed out.
Okay.
Some municipalities do it that way too. So
I would
I'm not sure if that's what
absolutely
you're
be
talking
in
about.
favor, okay, of within the warrant article, whether it be at the end, the beginning, or wherever, posting the tax impact that warrant article would have. My recommendation on going forward with regards to that, addressing at least part of your concern. But then again, I think that will require, a formal motion and then support among the budget committee members to carry that forward.
It might be required by the legislative body.
Okay,
I'd have to relook at my notes from that training.
okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So if we could just leave that as an open item.
Oh,
Be like on the
So-
ballot.
Yeah, it is a vote of the legislative body that would approve that,
Okay,
which is the voters in March on the,
okay. But they would only know to do that if they were asked that's up for consideration, right?
that would have to be a separate warrant article that would be put onto the ballot. So it would be something like the selectmen would recommend that the warrant article be put onto the ballot or something.
Okay, so could we make that recommendation to the selectmen that we would support, showing within the warrant articles, whichever ones there are, okay, what the tax impact would be?
So if that's the board's wishes, I can certainly take this back to the board and ask them if they would be willing to
Correct.
add a one warrant article to the warrant, asking for future
Right.
financial warrant articles to show that.
So does that require a motion here?
Yes.
Okay, I'd make that motion that we make a recommendation to the selectmen to put together a warrant article for the town voters to require future warrant articles to post a tax impact for each respective warrant article.
Jake Bemis, seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Dion, I will take that
Great.
back to the board on your behalf.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Richard, thanks for bringing that up.
Can I ask another question?
Oh, God, yes.
Just in listening to the discussion, when the town puts out a warrant article, while there may be legal requirements for what has to be in it, is there any reason why what you're requesting can't be put in there just a matter of convenience for the voters?
It's my understanding, based on what Liz is saying, it has to be approved. Okay,
To make it a requirement,
correct, right?
but just to make
No,
it, no.
You're preaching to the choir.
Oh, okay. I don't sing very well, but
So, but no, yeah. So,
Would you like me to just add a little bit to that?
yeah, great.
So, that is a law, I guess you could say, by the DRA, the Department of Revenue Administration, to allow the voters of the town to decide on the ballot on that warrant article if they want to have that added to the warrant article. Otherwise, it cannot simply just be put on. The DRA has a lot of rules. So even if the selectmen decided they wanted to do that and they put that sentence at the end of the warrant article, the DRA would send it back to us in January saying you have to remove that because they have a list. They have an electronic list for every municipality in the state of when every single thing was approved. And that would be on the list. So we are required by state law to follow the DRA's regulations.
But Liz, if we follow the rule, get it approved in advance,
Mhm.
then
Then it is done.
it's fine.
Yep.
Okay.
I think you also had a question about the federal grants
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, right? And I don't know
yes,
if that's something that
I
you
know
could
they were
speak-
structured, intention was to make sure the money got spent.
Yeah. let's-
So that would be the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds, and which it stems from the federal government down to each state. And then the state decides how much is allotted for each municipality. And they are distributed one payment in 2021 and which is 50%, which is it was about 270,000, 260,000, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but, and then next year, the other 50%. But those funds can only be used for specific things. There's strict criteria as to how the municipalities can use the ARPA funds. And actually, we're having a public hearing on that next week to, for the selectmen to officially accept the funds. And we have until December 31st, 2026 to spend those funds on items or projects that qualify under the ARPA funds.
Just a quick question on the math, Liz.
Yeah.
You rounding the numbers,
Yeah.
okay? The 260, the 260,000,
Yeah.
is that the 100% number?
No.
Okay, so it's 260 in 2021 and roughly 260 in 2022.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
We have an ever-growing list of items and projects and, you know, just to give you a few examples, for instance, during the state of emergency, any lost revenues, we could use those funds to cover those lost revenues. Any projects that were infrastructure projects or things of that nature that were to have been done during the state of emergency, but were not because of COVID concerns, then those funds could then help with those projects. Let's see, any sort of overtime by employees for emergencies, those funds could be used for that. Or off the top of your head, do you have a couple more examples maybe that you can think of?
The healthcare, for like a COVID facility. Or Parker. Yeah, there's definitely, I have a little packet here, actually. There's 6 criteria. 5. Yeah, there's definitely very specific.
We do have some, Elizabeth Dion, we do have some projects that were to have been done in 2020 and could not be done because of the state of emergency. I mean, long before vaccines and buildings were closed and COVID outbreaks were happening in government here and things of that nature, and sick leave, people who were mandated to quarantine and stuff. So we do have a list, an ever-growing list for these funds to cover those losses.
Reuben Parker, do you, I guess, have thoughts on how, or maybe the timing even, like how would that show up, or would it show up in the budget that we're reviewing? Like,
So Elizabeth Dion, it's my understanding, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but those funds would not show up in the budget. They have to be handled separately as almost as an unanticipated revenue, I believe, and used. It's like a separate fund, I guess you could say, that can only be used for certain things. I don't even know if fund is the right word, but they have to be separately. So.
I guess to the extent that it's being applied to something that would have been budgeted for otherwise, though, will we see line items like decrease? Or, I mean, it sounds like we're still figuring out how they're going to be applied. So my assumption is when these budgets were created, it wasn't factored in anywhere anyway.
So Laura Parker, surprise, no. So some of the items that we will pay for with this American Rescue Plan money are not budgeted items. They're projects that maybe were not done, but they weren't budgeted like in this budget. So you'll never see those expenditures and stuff. It's all handled on the outside of the general budget. You won't see like a huge decrease or anything.
If we're on the subject of making recommendations to selectmen, the thought process would be for the West Alton, and make sure I got the right building. Okay, the West Alton Fire Station, which is by West Alton Marina.
It's on Route 11.
Yep, and I always get the route. Is it across the street from West Alton Marina?
It's
Okay. Okay.
it's in
Or
that-
almost, it's right there.
Yeah.
You're in the right spot.
All right. So my thought would be that we might consider or make a recommendation to the selectmen, if the board approves or agrees, to do a business use and occupancy assessment for the Mount Major building. What do you call that?
Elizabeth Dion, are you talking about the fire station or the community center?
Both. I'm going to be talking about both.
Okay,
What do you call the Mount Major building?
Mount Major Community Center.
Great. So look at procuring a business use and business occupancy use of each building, the Mount Major Community Center and the West Alton Fire Station individually, and if they were combined.
So Elizabeth Dion, I have a question. What is a business occupancy use study?
You have somebody usually with a real estate background, look at the buildings, the geographics, the parcel, and determine best use for that asset, if there is one. But to be putting money into the maintenance and the upkeep of two buildings that are not used forever doesn't seem to make sense to me.
I believe this was discussed last year as well, and I think there are some, and I don't know the specifics, but complications related to.
That's right.
Does the town?
Well, for the
like
fire
town
station.
Own the land?
Yep.
Or
And that would be
is it-
contemplated in the business use survey. Whether you need easements, okay, whether they have access to the road, they would lay out a plan, okay, as to how you can use it, if in fact you can. Okay, and if the answer is you can't use it, okay, well, then the next question would be, then why are we maintaining them? Okay, and yes, I am aware of those complications, but a survey by an independent factoring those things in to potentially take a long-term liability and make it pay for itself or perhaps turn a profit, okay, is worthy of consideration. So that would be my motion. Is there a second? Okay, so
Elizabeth Dion, if I just may speak briefly before you move on. We just did a quick speaking about whether that would actually qualify. We don't believe it would, but for our own sakes here, we'll look into that anyways, just to see if it would have qualified or not.
what would have qualified? What do you mean?
Elizabeth Dion, a business occupation use study. If it would have qualified under for ARPA fund usage.
Oh, okay, that was a piece I was missing. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Any other public input? Close that.
You're up again. No.
Any other business?
Actually, just a quick, Richard, is participation on a committee like this something might be of interest to you? Don't need an answer now. Didn't mean to put you on. I don't mean to put you on the spot. That wasn't my intent.
That's
You
two of us
did.
that have asked you now.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, give it some thought and, so.
Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made. Dave Hershey.
Seconded by Jacob Demus.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Only the school board could go this smooth, I would be a happy.
It's good planning.
I've never had one.
Do these stay here or come with us?
You take it. It is yours. I
Thanks for coming.
apologize again for last week. Sorry again for last week with the doors being locked.
I'm a deer in headlight right now because I don't even know what we just did. This is what I expect.
Thanks for coming.
We'll see you at next meeting. Yes, I will not be next week, so I'm gonna see if Karen.
Today.
Yep.
The others. They are trying to, you know,
Two crimes.
No, I think I'm all set, as long as I don't plan anything for Thursday.
We have to shut.
Oh, David, just so you know, it's not done recording until I hit the off button.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so-
somebody's gotta turn off.
Yeah, I gotta,
Okay.
let me just.
Minutes
Thank
can go
you.
on
Yeah.
forever.
Josh will be listening to that going, what are they doing?
We're talking about John.
Yeah.